Information Station 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. I think I learned new words just from doing this job, Robin. Just from doing this job.
I do.
I learned a new word. It's catathemia. Catathemia. I think I'm saying it right. And if I understand the definition right, based on the book we're going to talk about, it's when somebody commits murder or homicide because they're in love with you, or something like that, right? They're oh my gosh! And you can imagine a million different circumstances where that scenario might play out, right?
Oh yeah.
Let's hope none of them ever happen. Gosh, how many skeletons are in my closet? At my surface. Circle of Trust is the title of the book. Close Enough to Kill series, book 2. Jacqueline Simon Gunn is on the phone, and my gosh, she's got a list of credentials. I think she's up in New York, right? It says here she's an esteemed clinical psychologist in Manhattan and a freelance writer. She has written articles that are both scholarly and mainstream, and she's an avid runner.
Yeah, I love that.
You gotta run if somebody's gonna be, what's the word again? Catathemic on you.
Yeah.
Catathemic? Is that one of the versions of that word? Jacqueline Simon Gunn. Good morning, Jacqueline. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I caught you in the middle of a drink of water or something, didn't I?
No, coffee.
Coffee. I should have said coffee.
Yes.
And I
coffee.
should. Yeah. And you're in Manhattan right now?
Yes, in Manhattan.
And
I used to live in Florida.
Did you? Oh, South Florida?
Yeah.
Where'd you live?
Yes. I lived on South Beach.
Oh, you got out of town because of the Zika? Did you say?
No, I lived there. I lived there in the late 90s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, way before Zika. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just heard about that. I was going to go too.
Oh, really?
Anyway.
You changed your mind, yeah.
No, I'll probably go in the fall when it's cooler.
Yeah, go in the fall. You sound like a Long Island girl. Are you from Long Island?
No, actually, I'm from Northeast New Jersey, and the accent does sound like New York.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like I grew up right across the Hudson River from Manhattan, but in New Jersey. I'm a Jersey girl, yes.
Jersey girl. We love Jersey. So the word is new for me. Am I saying it right, catathemia?
It's catathemia.
Thymia. I always get it wrong. Okay.
No, it's not you. I should have put the enunciation next to the word because no one seems to know how to pronounce it. So that's my fault. I apologize.
That's okay. I mean, my job is to try to figure out these things. So is in your practice as a psychologist, do you see this? Well, maybe not fulfilling itself as a murder, but maybe somebody who's thinking about it. Is this rolling around in people's minds a lot?
Well, I used to work in the correctional system, so in those places I worked with murderers and rapists, and so I had heard stories like this.
Okay.
In private practice, I do hear, I mean, listen, relationship issues is probably one of the primary reasons people come into like a private practice, and there is a fine line between love and hate, and I guess my question has always been like, how does one cross over from love into murder? So I've seen that in forensics, but I have not seen that in private practice, so it's been a while. But I hear internal narratives, and sometimes people come in and they say things like, I feel like killing so-and-so, I'm not going to do it, but I'm afraid of my thoughts. So people think about it a lot. It's not that unusual. It's the action that differentiate.
Wow, that's crazy. You know what really struck me about the book, because I mean the book talks. This is part of the book, but the character. It's been 19 years.
Yeah,
I mean a long time.
I know.
I mean, as a psychologist, is that normal for somebody to hold on to something for 19 years?
I have had patients like that, and yes. I mean, is it normal? I mean, normal is kind of a weird word to ask a psychologist because we see such extremes on, like, anything can be normal. It's all on a continuum. Even murder is just a continuum of someone who's enraged. It's an extreme. So Jane's character is an extreme example of someone who's been unable to let go, because she's been unable to let go to the point that it's affected her entire life. She hasn't been able to move forward. She's stuck. But I hear narratives of people who are married to someone else and still longing after and have fantasies. A lot of my characters are on the extreme spectrum because I'm very interested in extreme behaviors. But they're all people that I've seen. They're all variations of behaviors that I have experienced working in the field, or sometimes in my personal life, because as a psychologist, people tend to tell you things that they don't tell their other friends. Mm-hmm. And so I hear a lot of stories. And in Manhattan, sometimes people on the street find out I'm a psychologist and they start offering their stories. And you can't believe what people's lives are like. I thought I was weird until I became a therapist.
Oh, no.
And I realized that this is just how people are. It's not me. It's just life.
So you know what always amazes me is that they know somehow that they need help. That sometimes is like, okay, I have these thoughts, but do I need help? I mean, how do they come to the conclusion they actually need help?
That has to do with the level of distress someone has. So, like, a character like Jane, if she started to feel like, if she recognized that her inability to move forward with her life was making her unhappy, then maybe she would come into therapy to try to figure out how to move on. But in her case, I don't think she wanted to move on. I think staying stuck in that connection with Jacob Temple was like her lifeline.
Yeah.
It was, which you can see, I don't want to spoil it for readers, but as her story arc goes on, you see how she decompensates after he's killed, which just to me is evidence that she didn't feel like life was worth living without him. So she probably wouldn't have come into therapy because she didn't want to get better. Getting better was worse in her mind. I mean, it's not the way most of us would think, but it was the way that I think she thinks.
And it just boggles my mind when some people think the solution to everything is to have another person murdered instead of admitting their inadequacies and to move forward with their life. I mean, that is just absolutely insane, I feel.
Well, this is something I see all the time in therapy, not to the extreme of murder, but when people project their own internal distress onto another person. And to some degree, we all do this occasionally, right? Something happens and we feel, and this is what catathymia really is. It's just an extreme when someone murders, but you start to feel internal distress. And instead of saying, this is me, I'm feeling internal distress, what can I do to make myself feel better? All the blame gets thrown onto another person. They're the cause of it. This is all their fault. And then eventually, in catathymic homicides, the only way they feel they can get rid of the feeling is to eliminate the person, which is why they feel relief after.
Is the fact that he was a radio psychologist contributing to her not being able to let go, simply because all she'd have to do was turn on the radio and hear him?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, well, he had only been on the air 2.5 years before his murder. I felt like it was her way to stay connected to him. I mean, she had been stalking him anyway. So that's a great thing with fiction. It leaves some open for readers to make decisions about what they think particular motives are. In my mind, I think it probably kept him alive more once she could speak to him on the radio, but he was very alive in her head. And I've seen this in therapy, people who have no contact with someone for 19 years, and the relationship is very alive in their head, for better or worse. So, I think it was very unresolved for her because of the restraining order, not knowing why. This person who she had this very loving relationship with, someone she felt like she really knew and knew her, maybe for the first time feeling that, and then he gets this restraining order. I think the fact that it didn't make sense was part of what kept her stuck.
And this isn't just the only story you've woven into your novel. You also have a second story going on with Katie Carlisle.
Yes. That's the carryover from the first book. Although I know it reads as a standalone because reviewers have said that. Mm-hmm. But the first book, Circle of Betrayal, was when the initial betrayal takes place that then leads to the story between Katie and Yvonne in the second book.
Oh, wow. So it's, that's what was going to be another question down the road or down later in the interview. It was the Circle of series. So will there be a Circle of something else, a third book?
Yes, the third book is called Circle of Truth, and it's done. I mean, it's not. It's not going to be published for a while, but I know what the story is. So eventually, the entire story comes full circle with a huge twist at the end, and it's called Circle of Truth because as you read Circle of Trust, you see there are a lot of truths that are not really revealed to the reader, but to the characters there's a lot not known.
A lot of times when there's a book that has a lot of intricacies in it, as yours does, you come away from it when you've shared that story with somebody else, and the two of you will sit and say, oh my gosh, and you start to talk about other things that we get from the book. And I think in your book we get to see a little bit of how you think and how other people think, because you know how other people think. I mean, this is what you do for a living. Mm-hmm. And I think
scary.
What it shows, and hopefully people take this from it, I don't know if you think this or not, but if you're in a loving relationship and it ends, whether it ends, I mean, a lot of loving relationships end horribly, but then but time heals all wounds, or whatever they say. But I mean, I think you should continue to show love and respect for that person. I mean, not the same love, but just show them that you're not, you don't want. I don't know. I think you're showing us that we need to love the people we once loved, but but with a different. They say the English language doesn't have enough words for love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love my son,
Yes.
but it's a different love, than I have had for women.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying. So anyway, but I think if you have a divorce or something, you should still love that person, but just in a different way. And maybe that's what you're illustrating for us. I don't know if you're saying it, but do you think it would have helped? Would she have killed him if he loved her in some way, in some other definition? I don't know.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I think as her character unfolds and into the third book, which is where she's unraveled even more than the second book, I think there was some underlying psychological problems that maybe eventually she would have killed someone. I mean, no one can have given her what she needed.
My goodness.
Like the initial betrayal from Noah Donovan in the first book triggered the catathymia. And then I think her thinking became compromised, which sometimes you see with people who her thinking was compromised, actually, I believe, because there was guilt in the beginning, but eventually the power overwhelmed the guilt, and it just made her feel, because I felt it. When I was writing her chapter point of views, a few times I felt her power, the killer's power, and it was scary, and then I went for a run and I ran it off. But I could
Good
feel,
for you.
I could feel like how she, and this is more apparent, I think, in the third book, but eventually she comes to the conclusion that no one can hurt her ever again because she is the one who decides who lives and dies. And I felt that power. So I think it's very real. I mean, almost like an actor. I imagined it like an actor, right? An actor steps into a role, and they have to like really imagine how a character feels so that they can be believable on the screen. I felt that, even though I'm not an actor, I felt that while I was writing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was in the head of someone else who thought totally different than me, and all of a sudden, the words just poured out, and they weren't mine. They were like the way she would think, and I felt that power. And it was scary.
That's fascinating. But isn't that the definition of delusional, though? I mean, in an actor's case, it's your profession to be delusional, or at least appear to be.
Right.
But like the guy who shot John Lennon, wasn't he? Didn't he love John Lennon?
Yes.
But was delusional and.
He thought he was.
And
it is delusion.
And wouldn't that be what is the word, catathymic? Wouldn't that be a catathymic?
Catathymia.
Her homicide. Wouldn't that apply to him too?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I mean, it's interesting with psychology terms. There's always so many gray areas. I mean, the term that would be labeled would be something called an erotomanic delusion, which is the same reason John Hinckley attempted to assassinate Reagan.
Right.
It's when someone has a delusion that someone famous, usually like Jacob Temple, loves them or is sending signals to them through the radio or to television that they love them too, and that is a delusion. And the murderer in the book, yes, I agree, she doesn't start off delusional, but she descends into that because her belief system is very skewed, and that is a delusion. And so I guess the catathymia could run parallel. So you have someone who the delusion triggers this like pent up rage, and then eventually they can't take it anymore, so they kill the person. So I think yes. I mean, I hadn't thought about it before, but I think it makes sense.
All other psychologists and psychiatrists should read your books because they're better than a white paper or a thesis. I mean, this is really getting into the crux of everything.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, even my nonfiction books, I've tried to make them more fun to read because I think psychology is very interesting to a lot of people, and the academic literature is written so that no one either can read it because there's so much jargon, and the ones that can don't want to after 5 pages. So I've tried to take, and I do this even in the articles I write, I try to take these complicated theories and I try to ground them into like everyday life so that anyone interested in psychology could enjoy it. I mean, the series being fiction, I've taken it to a whole nother level, but this is something I've been researching for my whole career. I've always been fascinated with passionate homicides. Like, maybe it's a stick. My aunt had told my dad after reading the book that she thought I was deranged, getting into the head of the murderer. She meant it like in a good way, but I guess they, it's like if you meet me, I'm so even tempered and I'm like kind of, like laid back, and then it's like all this like craziness. But I see people as very complicated, so that's what you're getting. But yes, I mean, I'm trying to show, like, say with Jane's character, I mean, in my mind, I didn't know when the book started out, but I mean, she basically, if I had to diagnose her, she would be like schizophrenic. I mean, she had some dissociative qualities, like where she had the blackouts and she couldn't remember. And I've seen people like this in therapy, but then she also starts to hear that voice. So, I mean, she was pretty disturbed, but I am not labeling her in the book. Rather, I wanted people to feel like what it's like to be in someone's head.
It's a very complex book, and I think the listeners will really enjoy this one. I have a copy of it here. If you would like the copy that was sent to me, Circle of Trust, just call me right now, 622-9622, and I'll pick one number at random, and you guys can have it. The rest of us have to go buy it, including me and Robin. How do we do that? Jacqueline, do we go? Do you have a website?
I guess I do have a website, and that'll just direct you straight to my Amazon page. So, I mean, if you go to Jacqueline Simon Gunn on Amazon, you'll see all of my books are there, including Circle of Trust. And my website is JSGunn.com.
Okay, excellent.
So there's some blogs and stuff up there too. So, but that'll direct to the Amazon page.
And how is life in your personal world, on your personal relationships? I'm just curious because this is, you are so complex and you're just such a fascinating person to get to know.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think a lot of my life takes place in my head. So I think, well, I mean, my husband thankfully did not read the book, but he read pieces of it, and my dad was like, "You should be afraid," because. But I think I'm kind of introverted, even though I'm like open, and I think I have decent social skills. So the complexity is all in my own head, and then thankfully I have people who actually I talk to, but. When I was writing the trilogy, maybe it wasn't so easy for my husband because the only way I could write that was to be completely involved in that world. And that meant that I was disengaged a lot when I was home, because when I wasn't writing, I was trying to piece together the pieces of the plot, because it was so complicated. So, but he's very supportive, and he's an artist too, so that I think he understands.
I have a feeling that if it ever came to be that we were visiting Manhattan and somehow we bumped into you in a Starbucks or something, at, let's say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd start having a conversation with you, and the conversation would never end. It would be 12 o'clock midnight, and they'd be saying, the barista would be saying, you've been here a long time.
That's right.
You need to leave. Jacqueline, we've enjoyed talking to you so much. I sure hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as we have.
I did. I did very much.
Thank you for being on the air. Good luck with everything you're doing, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the air. Again, Circle of Trust. Go to Jacqueline's website, jsgunn with 2 N's.com, and go to the bookstores and get Circle of Trust. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
That was fun. We will take a little break, and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. It'll be breezy Wednesday with times of clouds and sun. A thunderstorm in the area, especially this afternoon. The high 89 to 93. A shower in spots Wednesday evening. And partly cloudy Wednesday night. Low 74 to 78. Thursday, partly sunny. There may be a shower or thunderstorm, high 89 to 93. For Friday, clouds and sun with a shower or thunderstorm, high 88 to 92. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
It's rodeo time in Ocala. The 34th annual Ocala Shrine Pro Rodeo returns to the Southeastern Livestock Pavilion September 2nd and 3rd. 7:30 nightly, cowboys ride to help children walk with all the major events of pro rodeo. Get your tickets now for broncs, bulls, and babes, cowboys, cowgirls, and you. September 2nd and 3rd, the Ocala Shrine Pro Rodeo. Don't miss it.
Hi, this is Brad. I want to take a moment to talk about a serious issue. In the next 5 years, the aviation industry is projected to have a shortage of commercial pilots. Now is the time to start training. Ocala Flying Club has started a scholarship for the youth of Marion County ages 17 to 24. The club will donate up to $4,000 towards a pilot's license. This will help get the student on their way to obtaining their commercial pilot license. If this sounds like something you would be interested in, or if you know someone that would be, please contact Ocala Aviation Services, 861-7484.
Just about 28 minutes after 9 o'clock. Nice looking Wednesday. Are you fasting today? Are you going to not eat at all today? Well, if you are not going to eat at all today, then never mind what I'm about to tell you. Unless you're going to, and if you're fasting tomorrow, then just forget what I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
If you're going to have lunch today, if you're going to eat today.
Yes.
And you like pizza. And who doesn't like pizza? Okay, so there's one guy who doesn't like pizza. Okay, but this is real pizza made by a real chef over at Palm Garden. Her name is Wendy, and she's got a staff that is going to be very busy today making pizzas, because not only are they delicious, but they are very affordable today. And you normally can't buy pizzas from Palm Garden because they're not a pizzeria. They're a health and rehabilitative company. What do you call it? Center. Health and Rehabilitation Center. Okay. But they are raising money for their Alzheimer's support group. If you have ever known anybody with Alzheimer's, then you probably know their caregiver. And that's usually a family member, husband, wife, daughter, son. And those people really, really, really have a hard job taking care of the person with Alzheimer's. It's not easy, and it's never ending. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes they need a little help, and those support groups make a big difference for them. I wouldn't be able to tell you the details about them, but trust me, I've seen them personally. Thank goodness, and knock on wood, I've never had anybody I had to really deal with Alzheimer's. But I've seen them, and I've seen the families, and I've seen how hard it is. So raising money for Alzheimer's support is obviously something we are behind. Palm Garden has always been supportive of us, so we want to return the favor. And the way they're raising money is by selling 16-inch pizzas today and tomorrow for only $8. So you have 4 choices: pepperoni, Italian 3-cheese, buffalo chicken, and Wendy's Piggy Pie. We figured it out. A pizza is normally cut into 8 slices. So that works out to $1 a slice. You can't beat that. It's going to be delicious. You need to call and order your pizzas, and then you go pick them up at Palm Garden yourself. Call Jan at 208-7839, 208-7839, and say, Jan, I'm coming for my pizza. And she'll tell you what time to stop by. So either today or tomorrow, or I think you can do it both days if you want.
Yeah, or it's baked or unbaked.
Baked or unbaked. Yes, you can take it home and bake it yourself. We'll take a little break. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Scores of people are dead in central Italy hit by a powerful quake.
The earthquake struck at 3:30 a.m. local time. There was no warning. People were asleep.